All right, so I am welcoming all of you after the little experiential break that you took, which you also utilized for something actionable, I believe, at the booth and exploring the other platform features. Yes, so okay, that's time now for a discussion. Discussions is something that I always love because it's almost like a conversation happening amongst the discussants, right? So, how automation AI can be the silver bullet for the financial officers and executives. Get ready to be armed because this discussion would serve like a weapon in our armor, right? So, okay, the capability to design solutions to understand more about any business is the heart of growth. The session that's growing up aims to review and also analyze how businesses can truly reap benefits of data strategies when it comes to the very critical function of finance. Well, yes, the experts are on board, and I will wait no further in inviting them onto the screens. Let's welcome Nandakumar Tirumalai, the Chief Financial Officer from Tata Chemicals. Let's also give up our hands to welcome Ashish Goenka, the Chief Financial Officer from Jubilant Foodworks. Let's also welcome Bhaskar A. Rao, the Chief Financial Officer from Bangalore International Airport. We'll also have with us Jagannath MS, the Chief Financial Officer and Director from Columbia Asia Hospitals. With that, let's get set to welcome Smeet Pathak, the Digital Workforce Evangelist, IMEA from Automation Anywhere. Well, the session would be chaired by Mr. Sachin Arora, the partner and head of Digital Lighthouse Analytics and AI from KPMG India. I'm going to be greeting all my discussants, as I said, and our session chair with a warm smile. Sachin, it's all over to you. Please take charge.
Thank you, Shikha. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session on how automation, AI, and analytics can be the silver bullet for the financial officers and executives. And as you know, reporting in finance is perhaps the oldest form of reporting and has also seen a huge amount of progressions since the beginning, from reports to dashboards and now to AI. AI in finance has actually been experimental, now operational, and now to operational. The CFO, is in the unique position to bring innovation and technology to any enterprise that they work for. He or she sits at the convergence of the most important data of the firm, which is the operating cost from the production, receivables from the customers, financial performance from the business unit, and that serves as the digital foundation for AI. And with RPA, powered by AI, has changed the game. Most financial teams now use RPA to drive efficiencies, but RPA can only automate simple, repeatable tasks. It can't automate the complex processes and workflows needed to improve business agility and efficacy. Adding AI-powered technologies and tools offer next level of automation for finance. And AI can perform tasks that requires human intelligence, such as gathering insights from semi-structured and unstructured data. And for example, using the AI technologies can process data from web pages, scan documents, PDFs, convert them into structured form for RPA to work. Meanwhile, advanced analytics and AI can help leverage the data processed by the data lakes and the processing engines with the RPA with predictive capabilities to simplify forecasting trends and user behaviors. Yeah. Complementing RPA with AI is a critical step in evolving the types of tasks being automated, from rule-based judgments and the scope of automation and task to process orchestrations. Now let's quickly hear from some of our CFOs on the panel today on how they have made use of data, analytics, AI, and RPA. So first, Ashish Goenka, Chief Financial Officer for Jubilant Foodworks. Hi, Ashish. The pandemic has caused a severe disruption, leading to multitude of risk factors coming into the scenario. How are you introducing data analytics in the long-term business strategies and decision-making processes post-COVID world to mitigate such risk and pose a threat to business stability?
Thanks, Sachin. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So I think COVID has been a once in a lifetime black swan event. I think that has caused large ripples across the country with lockdown, migration, regulatory changes, and wide shift in consumer behaviors. Even in our business of selling Domino's Pizza, we have seen significant shifts which impacted the business. We saw displacement of demand from large city to smaller towns as people migrated. We saw a shift from business district to residential areas as people were working from home. We saw a complete change in the order mix, even in the peak hours, and which had a bearing on our supply chain. And we saw a massive increase in delivery orders from what used to be a very dine-in heavy sales mix. So I think keeping one step ahead of these disruption was critical to manage our supply chain and plan demand. And I cannot overemphasize the impact or the need of data analytics in such a scenario, which can detect disruptions quickly and help us plan our operations and supply line accordingly. So I think some of the key lessons that we learned as we managed or faced the pandemic was, it's not just the depth of data that is enough. I think we need to also expand the breadth of the data, incorporate a lot of external data into analytics, from the business environment, the market, social media, huge amount of rich data on social media available, peer group data, to look at almost 360-degree holistic view of the data. Also need to look at more variables, how data from one source relates to another, and do it at the moment, and this calls out for, I think, importance of a single source of truth with data that is accurate, sufficient, and organized. And more importantly, companies have to make data digital first and analytics real time. Some of the actions, therefore, to deal with these learnings and to take it forward that we are taking in Jubilant FoodWorks is to first, I think, setting up data lakes in warehouses, to collect data and organize it into a single source of truth. Secondly, we are adopting a digital first philosophy, to build data workflows that collect, enrich, and the data so that we are able to extract insights that support decision making. Thirdly, we are looking at moving towards near real-time reporting of key KPIs. I think that is true across functions and it cuts across whether it is finance and goes beyond. So that we are also planning to implement predictive analytics and early warning systems in future. Not only that, fourthly, we are planning to constantly track consumer behavior, to match the changing pulse of consumer preference. Because what is really changing in real time is, what is ordered, from where it is ordered, during what time it is ordered, the order mix, and all of this has a huge bearing on our understanding of the customer better and to serve them better. And lastly, I think we are running several experiments, related to new products, offers, channel. We recently launched a new channel, which was drive and pick, where the customer could come to the store and pick their order. And these experiments in turn are generating more data, which is helping us get closer to the customer. So I think the approach that we are taking is that not just finance, data has to be at the forefront of the entire organization play, and finance therefore bolts onto it and creating the organization capacity.
Great. I mean, Ashish, it wasn't feeling like that I was talking to a CFO. You came across a complete technology person, single source of truth, inculcating external data, real-time insights, consumer behavior, predictive early warning systems, very good insights. So, a lot of organizations are generating large amount of data, and they may tend to sometimes lead to a data deluge. So what measures is your organization taking to counter the state of data deluge, and what technologies are you leveraging to enhance business intelligence and its resilience?
Thanks, Sachin. I think to me, the most important thing is, as I said earlier, achieving a single source of truth and one version of truth, which then enables you to truly understand and derive insights. Because there is abundant data out there from many sources, ranging from material to behavioral. Business users are bombarded with information from all sides. But at the same time, the shelf life of user data is decreasing. Data that is current is far more valuable from data that is from the past, and it is far more relevant in terms of decision making. So I think the underlying or the emphasis is on real-time data analytics, and I think that needs to be the focus that we all drive as CFOs. Some of the actions that we are, again, just to talk about Jubilant FoodWorks that we are taking is, we have very recently signed off on a formal digital strategy, and we are implementing it with focus to become a digital native firm. I think that's very important as we embark on a journey to become a food tech company. Secondly, we are working towards eliminating multiple versions of truth and creating a single source of truth that connects all teams and link data as per business need. Thirdly, as I said earlier as well, we are leveraging a data lake that connects backend and front-end system with all data workflows. Not only this, we have created a dedicated analytical function, which is ANI, right at the leadership level that cuts across department and business lines, which ensures a unified approach to handling data. I think this is really, really helping us. And lastly, we are looking at augmenting the data using the right reporting and visualization platform, because I think the user experience on emerging into data is equally important. So we are investing in a lot of real-time dashboards and decision support framework, which enhances the overall quality of decision making in the company.
Thank you, Ashish. I think critical points. You want to be a food tech and digital native is definitely music to ears, and of course your emphasis on a single source of truth, which is the data lake. Some of the organizations that I have personally worked with and have seen success to kind of counter the state of what is called data swamp or data deluge is starting from the right side and work backwards. Start from the customer, start from the user of the data, and to see what they would love to kind of visualize if they are internal stakeholders or if they're customers, their behaviors, and start capturing data from the sources then, and not just blindly copy a lot of data and bring it to the systems and swamp the systems with a large amount of data that leads to perhaps nowhere. So understand, I mean, of course, it's like a garbage in and garbage out.
Absolutely.
But if you start with a business outcome, it could just be very, very relevant. Thanks, Ashish, for your insights. Very helpful. Let me now invite Nandakumara Tirumalai, Chief Financial Officer, Tata Chemicals. Hi, Nandakumar. The pandemic has resulted in a huge and unprecedented spike in technology spending and is an implicit instance of data-driven revolution. What is your organization doing to embed data-driven technologies and methodologies into their DNA? And what's the short-term and the long-term financial implication for that?
Yeah, thanks, Sachin. And I think Ashish spoke so well about B2C business using analytics in a very nice way. And here I'm going to talk about entirely a B2B business as such. So what we do is in chemicals, we manufacture soda ash. And one of the important components, soda ash, is actually used in almost every glass. You see the screen in front of you has soda ash. The washing agent has soda ash. So a lot of applications of soda ash is there across the world. And one of the most important aspect is the manufacturing aspect. And therefore, in our case, Tata Chemicals case, data analytics is used in almost every sphere of the company. Manufacturing could be sales and marketing, could be customer experience, finance. I'll give a couple of examples on how we use analytics in manufacturing and therefore how we get the benefits out of that. For example, so soda ash manufacturing needs carbonation, which means basically it's a chemistry which is combining some chemicals, and we have some 14, 15 towers which actually combine carbon dioxide and let's say salt brine. Now, without data, we used to have some 15 towers as such and a computer screen with data coming in now. For the last couple of years, we've been able to use data live from all the towers in terms of all the parameters, in terms of efficiency, temperature, and the operator sitting at a screen is able to therefore use the data live and ensure that all the towers have the right efficiency and the best efficiency. And that drives, therefore, more profits, because ultimately, when you have better efficiency, you have lower cost of production. So an example is where manufacturing has got embedded analytics in this kind of example here. Second, we tried was, we have a lot of salt pans in Gujarat. We are on 38,000 acres of salt pans near Dwarka. And there was a humongous task earlier in terms of going into every salt pan and checking the salt content. It's a humongous task in terms of even the field work. So a few months back, we tried to see if we can use satellite images, and we spoke to ISRO and we did a trial where using a twin satellite focusing on that area, we're able to get data in terms of the on the light images of the salt pan. So on the color basis, we could make out how much salt is there in each salt pan. And using data feedback, now we're able to forecast actually in terms of when will the salt brine mature in terms of more certainty. So this is one more example where we used data, satellites, and analytics to ensure that we are able to forecast better. It's more of a trial now. It's worked well, and we hope to use that going forward more. Apart from that, we want to replicate this manufacturing analytics I just spoke about some time back in perhaps other manufacturing areas also across the world. We have 4 or 5 plants in US, UK, Kenya, and India. These 2 areas were done well. And apart from this, of course, analytics is being used in every other area in a very beautiful way. And in the long term and short term, I think the financial implications would not be too much in terms of spend. The spend is not too much, but the benefits are so much, that it's really worth the spend.
Sure, I think great insights. A penny saved is a penny earned, and I really hear you hard that efficiency, production utilization all adds to the bottom line of the organization. And if data is helping you do that, obviously the tools and technologies are worth spending for. Great insights. Yeah, there is indeed no shortage of dashboards and capable of giving us a snapshot of your business if you can. Um, what sometimes we might fall short of its context. So could you give us some context around how are you successfully leveraging dashboarding in identifying correlations pattern in the data that human might not be able to detect at scale? If I can take this example of salt pan and the ISRO imaging that you talked about, could be one example. If there is any other example that you would like to share, it will be nice.
Okay, so in terms of a dashboard should be able to tell a story. Otherwise, just numbers being shown to you is not really good. So we try and ensure that the dashboards are very intuitive, and it's a lot of it uses a lot of pictures and photographs and graphs so that it's easy to understand what those dashboards are. So practically in all dashboards, could be in finance, manufacturing, sales, we try and use a lot of visual effects so that the story comes out beautifully. For example, we had done recently a dashboarding of, for example, we did about 1920 dashboards of control issues. Let's say where controls can go wrong. So using BI and analytics, we try to have those dashboards where a CFO can see these 20 areas, what has gone wrong in terms of the last 1 month's data. So using the analytics and data and showing it in a particular way, where the story comes out is very important. So try to use that. We have data scientists who work in Tata Chemicals in the department, and they really work and go the extra mile to ensure that the visual effect is so good that one can draw conclusions just by seeing it and then wasting more time. So we use that in a very good way in all the areas, manufacturing, as a marketing, and we have Tableau, we have Power BI, all the tools available to actually see those visuals in a better way.
Wonderful. I clearly hear you that storytelling is an art. It's not just some numbers on the screen. It's also the ways of explaining the issue in the hand is very, very powerful. Thank you very much. These are very important insights. Let me move on to Bhaskar Rao, Chief Financial Officer, Bangalore International Airport Limited. Bhaskar, sheer volume of data can be overwhelming, making the analysis complex. With data visualization and enabling technology with the potential of storytelling, where does visualization stand in CFO digital wish list? And what is the bar to set for an investment in this, knowing very well that it has the potential to experience solid growth?
Thank you, Sachin, and good afternoon to all. You've picked up a right question for me in a sense of the sheer volume of data and how we can enhance. I mean, just to give you a few of the data points that we have, and the enormity of it is, one is the PAX data, basically arrival, departure, domestic, international. We have the air traffic movement data, the passenger spend in retail, in F&B, the cargo volumes, the utility usage, so much of utility that gets utilized in different parts of the airport, the airline connections, etc. So data could be overwhelming, I mean, from an airport point of view. And unless we have something, good tools to visualize data, we will not be doing enough. And let me tell you that with all that we are doing, I mean, we have a lot of, the airport is turning digital. In a sense, we are also in a major expansion program, and we are putting almost an airport within an airport, building a terminal. We already have the second runway, etc. So the new terminal, one of the key pillars is digital. Of the 4 pillars that we have, one being the being a terminal in a garden, taking after the Bangalore Garden City. The second being a sustainable airport where we'll have all ESG principles laid. The third is digital, because we do believe that with what we have experienced during this pandemic, that touchless and technology is going to play a very important role. So visualization to understand what solutions can work best for an airport is very important. And I can tell you that we are just still skimming the surface of the power of data. The true value of the data can come from data correlations, especially in a complex ecosystem like an airport, where there are multiple services offered by many stakeholders. I mean, we are a business within a business. In a sense, we are in retail, F&B, in cargo, in ground handling, catering. So, landing and taking off airport is just one incidental work that also the airport does. So in such an environment, data can be very powerful. I'll just give you an example, let's say from an airport perspective. We get weather data, and the weather data, let's say, predicts a thunderstorm in the evening. That's one data point. Imagine that due to this inclement weather, flights are predicted to be delayed. Okay, such a delay, such a prediction for a couple of hours can complicate heavy incoming flight traffic, leading to a surge, let's say in cab, in taxi demand at the airports. So a mature data analytics ecosystem, which connects all of these multiple sources of data and a robust analytical engine, will help our operations team, airlines, cab operators, land side traffic, will help us in enhancing revenue, will help in improving efficiency, and also optimizing cost at this thing. So algorithms can help, on the basis of historic events, that what are the recommended steps to be taken by various stakeholders for a service recovery, or to share the insight in advance to an event. So in an airport, these are very important. I mean, security, safety, and predictability are very important for an airport. And this sort of a digital awareness and data visualization spreads across, and it comes a lot to finance. And finance, in a sense, is a partner in almost all digital data visualization efforts that are being done in the airport. So as we see that in the data journey, our aspirations are based on the value that we want to derive out of data. And this will help us in moving through steps of the data journey, from descriptive to diagnostic, and from predictive to prescriptive. So it's very important, and we also train our workforce in converting, let's say, people from various departments into data scientists, so that they can start using the visualization tools that the organization is implementing, and we've done a lot of that. We have an enhanced digital presence. We have a Power BI. We are in the anvil of sort of implementing asset management program, etc. So data and visualization, I would think, are key, especially in an environment like an airport.
Thank you. I mean, Bhaskar, very relevant points. Airport is, to me, a digital factory, from generating data to consuming, and then almost like a immediate gratification if the airport responds back with some pleasant surprises to the consumer. And I really see this as a massive area of customer experience that can be improvised using the data and analytics. And I really see the power coming in from especially from Bangalore International Airport, and that has been one of the top-notches airport globally that I have personally seen in terms of customer experience and user experience. So coming to the next point, robotic process automation (RPA) has now become the tool of choice for nearly 50% of financial market players seeking to automate manual processes. What are some of the potential opportunities for an organization like yours or a unit like yours for potential cost savings or strategic advantages through the route of RPA?
So, Sachin, RPA is absolutely important for any business now, because what RPA drives is to make sure certain parts of the processes becomes automated, thereby improving efficiency and cost, which we have realized, especially in a sector like aviation, we have realized that we have to be absolutely on top of a optimization, cost optimization process, and that's a key to our survival. There are two very important things that we look. One is how we can do a revenue enhancement, and again, we have taken digital route, and the second is on cost optimization. Key over here is that RPAs, as we see today, are sometimes patchy, sometimes brittle. So what we should be looking at is using RPA, strong RPA applications which can automate processes, which can integrate well within the overall digital architecture that has been put for the organization. There are many low-hanging fruits, which I think every organization should do. Digitizing the process, get into the automation, put self-learning algorithms, where large process of large volumes of transactions are concerned, it should definitely be put in. But it's also worthwhile to ensure that the large volume of transaction in the enterprise, the RPA investment to the sort of benefits that you get, the return on investment should also be evaluated. And that's one area where we are still evaluating a lot, because if RPAs are very patchy, they will not give the right return on investment. So RPAs should be taken as in a holistic, in a large sort of a manner in which the implementation should give much better response or results than doing just some RPA, saying that we are also have done RPA. So some of the areas that we've seen and we've sort of implemented or in the stages of implementation are in payroll management, in the inventory management, in invoicing. These are some of the areas that we are looking at. We are also looking at some of the taxation related data. And again, when you have so many vendors and so many concessionaires, RPS could give a lot of benefits on speedy reconciliations with all of this. So the key over here are the following questions that we see. How do we know that where to implement RPA and what is the level of automation required? And that's a journey that we are currently evaluating across the organization. To what extent we should allow the RPAs to help us in our management of the data, and how do we justify the, as I've told, automation and the cost that is involved. There has to be clearly a business case that has to be made at all times. So we are looking at all those areas where manual and error-prone zones where RPA processes can give us more robust. So that's something that we are looking at implementing clearly. Rule-based, wherever it is rule-based, standardized processes, we are looking at implementing RPA. High volume of data handling, that's where again we think RPAs can be done well, and a structured digital content. So we are in this journey as of now, and we think that at the end of the period we should have a roadmap and a architecture of RPA which suits our business, and that can be true for every businesses. So instead of just going with off the shelf saying this will help only this portion or that will, we do think that that could be patchy and that would not give us the entire benefit.
Wonderful, Bhaskar. I think you touched upon many critical points. Taking RPA to the strategic level, then just to the tactical level, is very, very important. Evaluating the outcomes, evaluating the experience, post implementation is very, very important. Otherwise, it could be just effort with a lot of investment, but not much in ROI. You did touch upon systems like payroll, inventory management, taxation, invoices, and reconciliation are potential areas for an RPA. And of course, wherever you could find rules, you could kind of convert into an process automation path. So very critical points and very well covered. Thank you for that. I would like to now invite Dr. Jagannath, Chief Financial Officer and Director, Columbia Asia Hospitals. Dr. Jagannath, how are you leveraging data as a service, ensuring the data recency, integrity across the various facilities and geographies? So I would like to hear your views on that.
Thanks, Sachin. And first of all, I'm not a doctor, but though I work for a hospital, I think that needs a little bit of correction there. However, have insights to what the hospitals have been doing as much and what the doctors do. Couple of things, even as a background, hospitals are very strange businesses. We deal with retail. We are like a hotel, hospitality industry, and we deal with medicines and doctors. So it's a combination of, let me put it, about 3 to 4 industry. And fortunately for me, what happened was I was also in charge of the IT side of things, the information technology side of things. So that right from the start, and I was the founding CFO as well way back in 2005. So it helped me kind of set the agenda right in terms of the automation. In fact, we are one of the very few fully automated hospitals across, having data with respect to every patient in an electronic medium. And that kind of helped us the way we developed our own ERP and thereby setting what is called a baseline for us in terms of data. Because we can talk about AI and other things. However, I would like to emphasize 2 things. First, you need a good structure in terms of getting data. And secondly, somebody has to enter data so that you can kind of really, leverage on the data as much. So that is something, since I had the ability to look at both from an IT as well as a finance standpoint, was able to structure it well. So just to give you an example, from a market point of view, of course, hospitals have huge amounts of data. So structuring it from a geography, from a doctor's point of view, from market segmenting and so on, there's a huge set of data which we'll have to classify. In terms of recency, what we do is, of course, while we classify data, it's a day-to-day report where we look at what is the set of new patients who are coming in and who are the old patients who are coming in. And that's something which is very, very key in terms of looking at data recency and behavior. Also, in terms of how we leverage data, we have multiple sources of creating businesses, essentially. To name a few, what we have done is, way back we discovered clinical research as one of the areas where we could support the pharmaceutical companies, because we were quite automated in terms of data. So they could pick a kind of a patient who had, let's say, diabetes, hypertension, and something else. So those kind of data they could pick, and we started off a business in clinical research, and that spun off as a nice business. Though, of course, there are a lot of other issues which happened in between. But then it gave us something to say, here is a new line of business for hospitals. Secondly, and this is something which we use much more as a tool, is in terms of marketing campaigns. So how do I look at, for example, diabetics? So we go and look at our lab data and the relevant tests and target marketing campaigns around them. And that's one area which we do predominantly when we look at targeted marketing campaigns around. So that, in fact, some of our patients have told us we didn't even know that we are likely to be diabetic, for instance. and that's something which was helpful. Also, the one other thing is in terms of we work with a lot more what we call AI companies, where, for example, some of our results, etc., we take the help of such companies to kind of give out, set of findings which can help in terms of just not treatment, but also for medicine and so on. So those are areas which we deal with a lot more in terms of data. But also in terms of routine stuff of data, like for example, why did a customer who came in for an ultrasound did not do a follow-up, and later on could she be a customer for a delivery? So those are things which we keep looking so often to see how to kind of look at data connects so that we kind of leverage data as much. So that in short, and this kind of gives us not alone just insights, but then leads to a lot of businesses, as well as it's very helpful in detecting some diseases, and which is much more where from a very societal point of view, where people become aware of, yes, I have this problem and these are life threatening and so on and so forth. So I would go to the extent of saying that data and getting AI into hospitals more specifically is so important for the life of people as much, who's our patients essentially.
Wonderful. I think you touched upon quite a many points, Mr. Jagannath. I correct the doctor part of it now. Sorry if it was documented with me like that. You talked about it's many industries in one. Hospitality and being a hospital are two different things, and of course, you're also using data in many ways, including running marketing campaigns. Was quite music to my ears, given the fact that you could predict some of the through the symptoms, diabetes, and reach out to the patient upfront. I've really seen this for the first time, at least in India. Glad to hear that. So it's almost like irrefutable that data is the new superpower, and sometimes the question of ethical use of data in general and the customer data in specific in digital economy comes to the forefront. As such, the convergence of data technology and the regulations becomes inevitable. What are some of the defining principles that can help industries to be more forward to this important aspect of usage of data?
Very apt question, and especially with hospitals. One of the things, as you know, we deal with people and much more their confidential data, much more intimate than anybody else, any other industry perhaps, because we know their history as much in terms of their medical side of things. So questions come up in terms of two key things: privacy, confidentiality, and secrecy. Once again, this is very key on how you kind of manage data. Today, we don't even kind of think twice before downloading an app, which is a game or something else, and we just say I accept. So I think that's a tendency of I accept all the terms and conditions in an app. That is something which you will be extremely careful. As a customer, I would say it's very important for anybody to look at the terms and conditions and see what is in store for you and what do you really want. So the question of I accept is something as a terms and conditions is absolutely something to watch out from a very customer-centric viewpoint. From the hospital side of things, we are, of course, there's governance to it. First, of course, there are laws to it, which is the law of the land, and to a great extent, medicine is controlled by the MCI, Medical Council of India, the Information Technology Act, and more some of the hospitals follow what is called HIPAA, and which is much more in terms of interchange of data and how you manage data, more with privacy and secrecy in terms. So these are something like pillars or boundaries, I would say, to say where you are in terms of data, really. So that is something which we kind of look at, whether we are a HIPAA compliant software to see things are in check clearly. So in terms of principles, as I would say, one, beware, look at what exactly you are accepting. That's one. Secondly, in terms of data, what we follow is consent. Now, this may be true for many other industries as well. What we take is patient consent. So patient consents to say that this data will be utilized for one, your treatment, could be used for something else in terms of research, etc. And if we are using it for research, we specifically mention that this is going to be used for research and so on. So that is something they are fully aware that data is used. Thirdly, and more importantly, when we share data, and I believe when sharing of data across the board, many industries will have to share data for various purposes, including research and business. Now, in hospitals particularly, sharing of data is extremely confidential data where we need to follow suitable protocols. And therefore, when there is mass of data, we use techniques like encryption and decryption so that the base in terms of the patient identification is not there. So to that extent. So I would say as principles, these are 3-4 key principles to look upon so that data is used adequately at the same time in a manner where what it should be ethically used for clearly.
Wonderful. Today it doesn't feel like I'm talking to CFOs, given the type of terminologies being used by all the fellows so far. Single source of truth, data lake, encryption, decryption. I'm really feeling, the industries and the genres are merging now, which is very nice to hear because digital has to become part of almost everything that we do, and of course, data is an important fabric to that. Thank you, Mr. Jagannath. I think your views were very important, very pertinent, and I like the point that you mentioned that it's important that the permissions, the acceptance of I accept what each individual must kind of go through is very important to the data sharing aspect of it. Let me now invite Mr. Sumit Patak, Digital Workforce Evangelist for Automation Anywhere. Hi, Sumit. While the next generation RPA cognitive functions and AI solutions to everyday commercial operations remain, at least 3 to 4 years away, how do we, like as tech enablers, map out a practical yet profitable transition to this game-changing RPA sort of technologies?
Hi, Sachin. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon as well. And I will just get to that question in a moment, but I would like to just talk about, as you spoke about, this amazing insights which we have received so far. And in one of the webinars I was there, one of the CFOs said that they are now looked upon as the information architect of the organization and not CFOs, right? And what I could see and witness here was exactly the same. I think you've got more insights in terms of the digitization of the entire organization, and it's amazing to see. Sachin, if I can come to a question by just touching on what Bhaskar spoke about. Bhaskar, you said about RPA, right? You said RPA about it's not about doing a patchwork, and I'm in complete agreement with you. See, I was a practitioner myself before I joined Automation Anywhere, and had a chance to basically do the automation COE, set it up for 6 years. And one of the things I learned over the period of time was that initially it was all about building bots, right? And when you take that particular approach, you don't go too far. It is not about getting your KPIs and how many bots I have in place, but it is about providing the right value, right? And then looking at the value-driven automation is what we aspire to. And when I say value-driven, it means how do I provide a solution to a problem, and in that, how can I use the technology, right? And if you go backwards that way, you are basically able to help get the real benefit out of it, and ROI can be calculated in various different ways. It need not be only cost saves or your FTE saves, but it could be the new opportunity are identified as well. Sachin, in terms of RPA, the new technology, if I can just stick with the comment I made, when you are looking at solving a problem, basically, you are looking at the bouquets of technology coming through to do that, right? And that's where the term hyper automation was also coined. It is about the framework and advanced set of technologies which basically come through to help organization in doing their transformation. Technologies like process mining is there. You got low code, no code, and I will talk about that briefly as well. You got business logic to measure and monitor the output of the digital worker. How would you basically do that? And then supporting that with AI, ML, by bringing the intelligence into it, right? And while RPA plays the heavy lifting activity in terms of automating manual, mundane, repetitive, over the night batch processing and all of that, I think it's a combination of all of these technologies which come through to provide the real value. Like for example, could I have, while I'm going with the automation journey within the organization, how can I empower the end user to basically take the role advantage and go independently, right? And that's where the low code, no code technology comes in big, where the end user is able to identify the right processes and able to automate that particular part of process in their space, right? And that's actually truly enabling, and in doing so, you're basically changing the behavior as well, right? So that's one. Second, you look at the, I differentiate the automation into two parts: inside out and outside in. Outside in is more towards having the unstructured data, right? When you got invoice processing, when you got, order management, you receive a lot of invoices which come through. Now, I can use the combination of technology like RPA. I can use, IQBot, which is the digital intelligent platform for us, and do three-way matching, extract the data. Once the data is extractable, I can do many things with RPA. I can go and put that into the downstream applications, or I can create some reports out of it. So I think that's how we are seeing that from our platform, that how automation is basically changing to more intelligent automation. And in doing so, RPA is part of the process, a part of the story. But then you have got other technologies like I spoke about, low code, no code, AI, machine learning. Another thing which we are seeing significantly uptake, especially now in the last 18 months, is cloud, right? And dare I say that in front of all CFOs, but I can quickly talk about my experience with one of the CIOs where he requested to say that, Sumit, is there a way we can basically fast track our transformation journey where we don't have to basically look at the CapEx and can work on the OpEx, because OpEx is something given to me and I want to work from that, right? And we said yes, and cloud as a service is one of the ways which enables you to do that, right? So you do not have to bring your own infrastructure, right? You basically use the cloud as an infrastructure and use it as a service and pay as you go. So as you see, as you're moving, into the deeper automation journey, it's RPA is one of the story. You have got process mining, which enables to identify the right opportunities. Bhaskar, you spoke about the low touch. You spoke about the low hanging fruits. I think the process mining basically enables you to identify right steps. It basically creates the happy path and it automates to an extent. So that's one. Second, combine that with RPA, combine that with AI, ML, and then also cloud. Lastly, one more thing. See, 18 months we have been at our home. We've gotten used to our smart devices, and we call it a behavioral commerce, right? We expect everything to respond in the same way what I'm accessing from my smart devices, be it reaching out to buying a grocery online, or it could be banking, it could be insurance. I'm used to one particular way of doing things, or booking tickets, right, for airlines, right, for canceling for that matter. Now, how do organizations respond to such behavior? And that's where again, the automations come into picture while you got omni-channel. But then at the back of it, how do you basically connect these dots with help of automation with the technology which I spoke about to provide that experience consistently and accurately in every time?
Wonderful. I think you touched upon many points of technologies beyond just RPA and data visualization. You touched upon low code, no code. You also touched upon process mining. It's actually one of my favorite subjects. We have a large practice in KPMG for both of them, beyond just the data and AI practices. I cannot agree more with you, Sumit, that if you bring the power of process mining to find out the efficiencies in the companies within the processes, it can massively improve an organization's throughput, because every organization is nothing but a collection of processes, and every process has some bit of lethargy attached to it just because the way it functions. And process mining is a powerful technology to find out those inefficiencies, tell them how many times the happy path is being followed and not followed, and what could be the reasons for that, and how can you visually figure out that what are the different ways of reducing the inefficiencies and make the happy path followed a lot more often than it usually is doing. So I completely agree with you that it's the ambit of technology is a lot broader and bigger than just data and AI. Low code, no code applications, so creating quick applications in almost like days, not in months or quarters, and bringing the process efficiencies in. I think this is the most beautiful time in the history to really change the way organizations work. Yeah. So, coming to the next point and question to you. So while we are keen on embracing higher end RP opportunities, a very potent challenge that remain with the organization is disparate IT systems and lack of integration across the applications. What would be the best practice to bridge such a gap in a function such as that of sourcing and procurement, finance and supply chains and logistics? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, certainly, Sachin. I think, I have worked in the banking sector for some time, and if I can just talk about the last organization I was working, I was doing automation in the corporate space and corporate banking, and they had around 850 disparate applications. Right? And then what we have seen at organization level, they're on an average 1,500 different applications, and they are result of organic growth, acquisitions, inorganic growth. And when the organizations are growing, the last thing in their mind is technology will be worked out. You don't have to worry about it. It will have to make it happen. So and so be it. But usually it doesn't happen, right? So, and then what we also see is that, I'll just add to it, that we see silos, not only from technology perspective, but also the business functions, like the front office, middle office, back office. We have disparate technologies within these divisions of the organizations as well. So how do you basically have a value chain which basically cuts across this, right? You can't have automation in just back office, but your middle office and front office is still manual, or they've got their own sets of automation. If you have these islands of automation, you will never see end-to-end the actual, the seamless, low-touch experience, right? And so that's what we are seeing with our customer. One of the examples which I would like to talk about, and Ashish, if I can just take lead from what you spoke, and you spoke beautifully, right? That one of our customer, when there is onset of wave one which took place, they took automation as a lever to not only plug the leakage or reduce the cost, but they also identified an opportunity to create the new business stream, right? And in doing so, what I learned at that point in time, that they were in the supply chain perspective, they were not only looking at just in time to basically save the cost, because they do not want to keep too many capital blocked with the stocks, but also just in case. And that was a new thing. How do you basically respond to a situation where you have to create new business lines, and you need to have the agility in the onboarding process or your supply chain process in a way that in just in case delivery is also given. And that's where we saw that automation was used significantly. Like, for example, the entire RFQ process, from creating a sourcing plan, you have the suppliers list, you create the package, you send it out, you get the response, you do the first level of check, and then the selection process is still done manually, though. But around 80 to 90% of these steps can be done in an automated way. And I'm not talking about RPA. We spoke about the combination of technology which comes to do that, right? And so it basically cuts across in B2B environment, right? In the scenario, right? From request, from raising the request to fulfillment to order, and then your accounts payable and receivable comes into picture. So you have the entire finance factory, which basically goes then, which enables you to change. It basically gives you an opportunity to change the role of the individual, because they are not involved in doing this manual work, right? So coming back to to sum it up, I think it's a mindset. In the end, everything starts from there. If you basically look at the problem just as a small problem, as Bhaskar said, then you will end up automating that. I think it's about looking at the value chain, looking at cutting it across and using the right technology. And in doing so, you will be going across various different disconnected applications in silos, right? and that will enable you to basically provide end-to-end value proposition.
Thank you, Sumit. We hear you, and I agree with some of the points that you mentioned. Integration is hard, but the kind of outcomes are very beautiful. So it just makes it a little more worthwhile to, go an extra yard up front and then kind of make it happen. I really want to thank all the panelists to come in here today to talk about such an important subject. It was great speaking to all of you. As KPMG, I can tell you, we are building some of the large finance data lake than ever in the history that we have done, being a financial and accounting firm as a nature. And I really see CFOs are playing a more digital role. And it was such a pleasure to talk to each one of you. And I'm taking the message that our ecosystem in India is on the right hands with respect to not just CFO being perceived as cost gatekeepers, but also people who look at revenue growth and use the right sort of tools and technologies in digital to make it happen. And great speaking with the Sumit, with you. I mean, with respect to the tools and technologies that your organization, kind of offering for make it happening. So pleasure speaking to all of you. Over back to you, Shikha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done, Sachin. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. It was great.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. It's wonderful.
With all the thank yous pouring in, and Sachin, the strong message that you just said towards the end while winding up, I have to say a thank you to you for driving this one for us. And dear panelists, you represent different industries. So I believe your discussion did play an emphatic role in equipping our armament that I talked about and building a strategy that's right for the business. Thank you very much. And I do have a vibe of gratitude towards you for your spending your time with us. Thank you very, very much. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, for our next session, the only thing I could tell you for now is that it will vet an enterprise's ability to gauge the future and be ready for. After all, that's the difference maker for success, right? So it's a fireside chat coming up next. Don't go anywhere except checking out the NetApp booth and filling out the feedback forms at the booth as well. While I hope that you have already by now filled in the feedback forms that you see right at the bottom of your screen, I will be right back with the fireside chat. See you.